All right. Hello and welcome to the Regenerative Revolution. I'm Jacki Saorsail and I am here with my clients. We have Lauren Bond and Jonathan Kabat, and they are working on an eco-regeneration camp. So they have, 120 acres, right? Right next to Mount Shasta in California. And they are there right now, right? Are you?
Yep.
Yay, they're there. So, and it doesn't look too smoky. So they were having some smoke issues last week, but it looks like it's cleared up
Way better.
at this point. And so, yeah, they're wanting to restore this land, regenerate it, get more trees going, make sure that it's safe. It's a fire ecology, so they want to do it in a sustainable way where it's not going to burn down, and improving the soil quality and all that sort of thing. So to do that, they want to involve lots of people, have people come out and camp and work on the land with them, and we're figuring out how to make that happen. So what we've been doing is going through my Regenerative Enterprise Design workbook that I have up on the screen right underneath me here for the audience to see. And we've been asking questions and talking about various things. So we had their purpose and vision. We had their value proposition, market and delivery, and financial goals. And now we're talking about the structure of the organization. So last time we started to fill out this circles of engagement diagram, and I've pulled it back up again, the one that I'm working on, trying to fill in for them. They have an example of this that's kind of a general, that most organizations would have something similar to what they've looked at, and they might have it pulled up now. But it's going to be a little bit different for each organization, so we need to figure out what they want their organization to look like, and what those boundaries are that people would transition between being involved at one level to being involved at a higher level. And the hope is that if we can get that part figured out, it'll be easier to figure out what kind of legal structure and what kind of governance structures that they'll need to enable that. So, we're ready to start talking, but first let's do a little check-in. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're good. We're busy bees. We had a wonderful meeting with our registered professional forester and an ecologist yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And we walked a large portion of the land in service of developing our land stewardship plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll be talking a bit more about that today. And so I think we're just kind of like collecting ourselves today. Lots of phone calls, lots of errands. And then we're going to be possibly exploring getting a new dog today. So that's kind of exciting too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pyrenees Australian Shepherd mix, 95 pounds of Aussie.
Aussie love.
Sounds cute.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about having a structure that the forest management plan will provide, to really have a clear plan as far as the regeneration of the forest here. Yeah. I'm excited about this puppy. Well, it's not a puppy. I mean, she's 2.5, but she's huge, and never had a dog that's 95 pounds. So it just kind of felt like we should go meet her. So
nice.
Yeah.
Fun.
Lots of excitement over here.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks. So I've been really busy working on my master's degree, which I have another month and a half to get all written up, less than a month and a half. So yeah, I'm going to be really focusing on that the next few weeks. But after that, I'm going to be putting a lot more attention on getting this up and running, I know that I need to do more marketing and explain it better. I think it's just kind of confusing for people what this is all about. So, I'm looking forward to making some kind of intro video and stuff like that. But a little bit of intro that I forgot to mention is that we are live streaming on more than one platform. So I figured out how to simultaneously live stream on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook.
Yeah.
Wow,
So we are live all three places. I have Twitch open and I have Facebook open. I don't have YouTube open because I'm actually not sure how to get to the link. I'm still figuring this out. But if you're on one of those platforms, I've got the chat rooms open. You can talk to me. I think that this software is supposed to put all the chats together and show it to me over here. Maybe. I don't know. I need to get some people on here to test this and figure out how it works.
So if anyone's on there, send a message.
Yeah,
and then Jackie can find out if it worked.
Exactly. And Twitch says there's 2 viewers right now. So if you're watching on Twitch right now, please say hello so I can figure out if this thing is working. Okay. So we're ready to go. Okay. So last time we were talking about the different levels, and we had some. Oh, Benjamin! Hi, Benjamin. He's one of the
Benjamin.
Gaia people. Yay!
Hi, Gaia, you person.
Oh, and that was on Facebook. Okay, so the message from Facebook came through on Restream. So yes.
Awesome.
Yay, it's working.
Hello.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we were talking about these different levels that you might have, what you might call them, and it is kind of important if those levels are going to be coming with some sort of decision making or some sort of rewards, that we kind of know who's in that group, who's eligible, how they get there. So that's kind of the distinctions that we're trying to make by naming these. So we've got so far visitors, participants, members, full-time member, partner, contributor, and implementer are some words that we've come up with. But I'm wanting to tease apart, okay, is there really a difference between visitor and participant? Does there need to be a different category for those people? A member who comes part-time versus a member who comes full-time. Is there a difference there? Do we need to use this word contributor as something separate?
So, okay, go ahead. Okay, I'm going to start out just with one of those distinctions.
Okay.
Which is a visitor is someone who comes to check it out. We usually give them a tour, tell them about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We have some amazing conversation around the campfire, or no campfires right now, around dinner. We may do a couple of hours of volunteer work. So that would be like a visitor. They're and they're coming for a day or two. But I'd say a participant is someone who's coming to participate in a program that we're offering.
Yeah, I would actually make the distinction much clearer that a visitor is somebody who's not doing any kind of volunteer work or participating in a workshop or participating in any activity. They're just here to look around.
Okay. So,
and the reason being is that there becomes a liability difference between someone just coming for a little look around versus someone who's deciding to actually participate in activities.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull the word visitors off of the circles right now because that might actually be outside of the circles. If they don't have like a place in the Hotlum ecosystem, if they're just yes, they are in it, but they're not they don't have a place, they don't have a role that would be consistent, as an individual.
I guess for our thinking, I lean a lot on the trans-theoretical model of change, which is a model of change that was developed for smoking cessation and is used widely in addiction treatment. And so a visitor might be someone who's what we would call pre-contemplation. They're just kind of just starting to move into contemplating whether or not they'd want to be more engaged. And so it's something that's on our radar screen. We want to keep track of people who have expressed an interest. We want to keep track of people who are, wanting to be on our email list, but have
Mhm.
never even been to Hotlum.
Mhm.
But the future is for those who are participating, and that's
Mhm.
explicit
Mhm.
in our purpose statement,
Mhm.
that we're participating in the healing of humanity's relationship.
Right.
We're not just voyeuristically observing it on a video. So
Yeah.
that's the distinction there.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay. We could use one of these circles to talk about them, but let's get what the other levels are, and if we have room, we might put them on there just for kicks. But let's see what other levels we have. So we've got participants. Now, what's the difference between a participant and a member?
Well, I would think that a participant would be somebody coming for one time and not committing to a longer term engagement. So a member might be somebody who's, sponsoring us on a monthly basis, whereas a participant may be somebody who comes for a one-time workshop and never returns again, and we never hear from them again.
Mm-hmm.
So these are levels of engagement. My mind's going CRM,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to have ways of tracking people's engagement with the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be embedded in our CRM, our customer relations management software.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think the rubber hits the road, is someone returning and have an ongoing engagement, then they become a member.
Yeah, I think that an example, we had somebody come and visit for the second time this week, and he was here for several days. Part of it was because his vehicle broke down, but he's talking about having a really great conversation with us about natural building methods here, and making a commitment to come and help with that. Maybe leading a workshop, maybe
Likely leading a workshop.
yeah, likely leading a workshop. But so I would say that he's moving much closer. He's definitely more clearly in the member side, on this spectrum.
Okay.
He visited once several months ago, got a tour, did, but
Yeah.
now he's,
And he may not be the best example of a member, because he's likely is going to be on the advisory council. He has an international reputation as a designer of ecological regenerative systems. And so, another example might be, since we haven't actually had any formal workshops or any formal camping or any formal programs, in large part due to COVID, we don't have a great example of someone being simply a participant. We have more serious people coming, but then we have some people who they've really just kind of fallen into visitor. They just like to come up and hang out with us, but they haven't actually ever made an ovation that they want to do something in service of the purpose statement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay. Okay, cool. So what would be the next step up from member then?
what did you have written?
Full-time member, partner, contributor, and implementer are some words that I'd written down, not in any particular order.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how full-time member would work.
Yeah.
In part because we don't have the infrastructure at this juncture for people to be here on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
Do you think? But what I'm thinking about is this visitor that we mentioned, Nick. He started an organization, and it kind of has a two-tier structure as far as voting. And so we were talking about this, and he was saying that the board of directors of the nonprofit kind of follow, or maybe this was actually, no, this was somebody else. This is another nonprofit. It's some people who visited just a night ago. They were saying that
that's a bee.
Board, yeah, we have a lot of pollinators right here. Hello, pollinator.
He's checking out the picture.
Yeah. So it's on you right now. So our friends who have a local nonprofit, they have caretakers on site and they have actually more influence over the decisions of what's happening day to day than, say, the board of directors.
Mhm.
So I would say that the idea of full-time membership is maybe kind of like, who's really committing a large time period
Mhm.
and participating for more than like a one time, or
Yeah.
like if we had quarterly, cultural burn projects where we were learning about fire ecology, or if we had an ongoing, wilderness quest self-initiation ceremony that happened, on the quarter, the equinox and the solstice, um, those might be people who came for 3 days to a week. Whereas there might be another class of people eventually, um, who were actually here for 4 to 6 months,
Mhm.
and that would be a very different level of engagement and participation.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I guess, it would be a distinction about the time commitment that they were here, as well as their dedication to the purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas
Yeah.
somebody else might come for a shorter period of time and they're dedicated to the purpose as a member, but they don't have the inclination to make a 4-month commitment or something.
Sure. Sure. I also have the word implementer here. So when you talk about somebody who has more of a commitment, might that be called implementer rather than full-time member?
Well, we've
Yeah.
had this experience, and maybe Lauren
Okay,
can
so
speak to this.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like at this point, full-time member doesn't really resonate with me very
Uh-huh.
much. But what
Uh-huh.
it does is the contributor, and I don't know what the difference necessarily between contributor and implementer would be, but I'm thinking of one particular person who spent a lot of time up here, spent a lot of time, a lot of the trees that have been trimmed here, he's done it. He's not necessarily a person that will do a lot of facilitation of workshops as much. I mean, maybe on some
I
basis,
mean,
but
rather than getting into a specific
yeah,
individual, I guess we're
I'm
trying to
just
use
trying to use someone
models.
as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
we
it's
so,
good. It's good to think of examples.
so with him, I mean, I feel like he would be more than a member. I don't think he necessarily has the
Contributor, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that would be
Yeah, almost moving into partner. So a
Yeah.
contributor is somebody who I think is actually doing something that's manifesting something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas I think there are people who come and they're receiving, but they're not necessarily contributing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the stages of development that I look at from a psychological perspective is, at some point, your vision of purpose leads you to the mature adult stage of knowing what your gift is to the greater community.
Mm-hmm.
And so the contributors are people who are giving to the greater community of life. And so I guess that's kind of the distinction. We have people who contribute in different ways. Some are soliciting donations, and others are literally tending the trees or the habitat.
Right.
And so that's different than coming to a workshop to learn. The contributors are ongoing tending.
Okay.
They're forest tenders.
Yeah, and I think that we've got maybe two people that are within that, or have been within that realm
Mm-hmm.
thus far, who've really spent a significant amount of time here and contributed a lot.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay.
One is going to be a long-term contributor for sure, and the other one, don't know yet.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm really liking this. So we have 4 levels that are within. Sorry, fix it. I'm liking this. So we have 4 levels that are within the circles: participants, members, contributors, and partners. And I'm going to take the S's off. And then just outside, we have visitors who might be in the same category as people who visit your website. Like they're viewing, they're engaging in a way, but they're not a part of the organization.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say, like, if you're looking at the the lead funnel in yet another business model. It'd be like, people that look at the website would be one. They contact us, they come visit, and then like they're into the like member,
they're actively doing something. They're
actively doing something. Yeah.
Some people might just buy some bling on the website. Others might actually show up and start to do something that helps the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Or helps themselves and their communities develop a better relationship with their local ecosystem.
Yeah.
Learning there. So a lot of us feel like we're giving something and we want people to take that away. So there's almost a role of the participants are ones who are coming, learning something, and then taking that home to their local ecosystem, their local community, and sharing it. And then a contributor is somebody who's giving something to the ecosystem here.
Totally. Got it. Okay, so now I'd like to go to the bottom of the circles and start working up, talking about the thresholds of entry. So what does someone have to do to become that? So what does somebody have to do to become a participant?
Well, I think we already talked a little bit about this in your previous question, because
let's be specific.
Yeah, so specifically, someone to move into being a participant, I think they're, instead of just visiting, they're becoming involved. They're doing a workshop, or they're spending some time volunteering.
Yeah.
But it could be a one-time thing, but they're committing to some short period of time, and they're actually doing work on the land or learning or participating in an event.
Yeah, but I think also a participant might be somebody who comes to, say, a grief workshop. They could be participants.
Yeah.
And then the threshold starts to change a little bit after that.
Okay. I mean, yes. And I'm trying to figure out, like, from a legal perspective, you said that there's something about participants having more liability for participants. So what's the difference between somebody just like showing up and looking around for a day versus enrolling in a program? Is there actually something like, do they have to fill out a waiver? Like,
yeah,
we should do that.
Yeah, we have waivers and we have agreements actually. So if someone were to be a visitor, they might not be. I gotta kill that app. I have this new phone and I deleted an app, but it keeps telling me that there's a news break, even though I deleted the app.
It's done it every 5 minutes.
Yeah, really annoying what's happening in technology. But I'm also really deeply appreciative that we're developing this deep relationship through the technology that you've pieced together. So if someone comes and they are going to be here at any length of time, even a day, and may have time alone, they need to sign a waiver. And so therein lies, I think, a good distinction. If we're with them and we're just walking around the lowlands, then we're kind of keeping an eye on everything. But if they were to get injured, if they're off by themselves, we have certain guidelines about where you probably shouldn't go alone. And so we make that explicit in a agreement. And that also includes, like, when people come here and they want to share dinner with us, or they're here for, something that they're engaging with other people, we have to have some understanding about that during these times of pandemics. So Lauren and I just completed our COVID protocols for our river trip in the wilderness in Utah with Craig Childs. And it was very explicit. And it was like, initial on the dotted line. So I think when you start to become a participant, you might be handling tools, or you might be going on a more extreme walk with a nature guide or with a healing practitioner. And so within that, in this particular legal system, we do have to have them sign a waiver. The other thing is, I think the difference between a visitor and a participant is that there's often a fee for service. And the moment someone pays us,
Yeah.
then they fall under our commercial use permits
if we're
and
off the property.
and under our insurance. And we have a lot of overhead to manage around those kind of activities. Like if somebody wanted to do an overnight solo that was guided by Lauren to do a self-initiated ceremony in the wilderness, kind of a vision inquiry, a quest, that would be a fee for service. Even if it was on a donation basis,
Sure.
it would fall under our our commercial use permit. So there's a distinction there. I hope that's clear.
Well, I think sorry, go
Um,
ahead. I want Lauren to be able to talk.
Well, I think that some that is one of the distinctions, but some people that I would call a participant may not be doing a fee for service.
Right.
I think it should be in there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's some sort of
but they're volunteering. There's an engagement. They are engaged in what we're doing here, not just coming to look.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can even think of a volunteer opportunity as a program. So enrolling in some sort of a program would cover volunteering as well as paying for something, probably.
Yeah.
And then the signing of the waiver is just kind of okay, this is definitely over that line because you're doing something here, right?
Right.
If you send that waiver. Okay. Sure. Cool. So that's a good definition. Okay. So then a member, what does somebody have to do to be a member?
Yeah, again, we're dreaming into this, so none of this is in place yet. But I would imagine a member would be doing some kind of a monthly donation and would be simultaneously committing to.
There's a flicker that just landed.
Is it a flicker or a woodpecker?
That's a flicker.
Oh my goodness, a big flicker.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a lot of birds visiting us today.
I got distracted.
So
it's like this big.
Yeah. I would imagine that there would be people who would be offering us an ongoing donation, and that could be an in-kind donation or a certain level of volunteer hours. And they're here on an ongoing basis, perhaps, or perhaps not. But they're receiving some kind of benefit. And part of that benefit would be to attend certain decision-making meetings, would be to participate in certain members-only events. But there's another piece of this that we are just starting to deeply explore, and that's values. And so there's kind of a agreement or some kind of a consensus around, what is important and values. And so I think that somewhere in this threshold is someone agreeing, it's kind of like the Boy Scouts, like they have the Boy Scouts or whatever it is, or the Hippocratic Oath. It's not necessarily like a vow, but it's more an intention setting. And so I think that I would like to explore in our culture an intention setting that is collective and individual. And so to me, there's a distinction with members' ongoing engagement, but also with this deep intention that they are aligning with the purpose of healing humanity's relationship with the biosphere and relating to the rest of the planet, the more than human world, in an ethical way.
Yeah. Yeah. I sorry, go ahead.
That's good. I think that it's not just financial contribution, but they are contributing on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So somebody that's saying, I really want to participate in helping with a particular project, like maybe building a food pantry or something, and they're like, okay, I'm going to come and I'm going to actually be really involved. I'm not just going to come for a day or for a weekend, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to communicate about this, and I'm going to just have more engagement in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what you were saying about kind of agreeing with the purpose, I think you could do some version of that with each level. So, like, if somebody comes to be in a program, you could have just your little intro and like setting the rules, the agreements for, this is how we act here, and this is how we, you have that agreement setting, context setting talk at the beginning of any program. So you can do that with participants. And then with monthly donations, maybe there's just, again, like we need to figure out what kinds of things you're doing. And we'll get to that next. But, if you're doing a monthly donation over, Patreon or something like that, then it could just be something in writing that they would agree to, or you could have a video or something where you explain more about your purpose and then have them just agree that they're going to be a part of that or something. But then definitely with contributor, I think that's where there might actually be like an oath or somebody like, making a commitment to work towards your purpose with you. Right.
Yeah, I mean, what's coming to mind is I used to lead adventure therapy for youth at risk in a residential treatment program. And I developed a model that I called the chaos model.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to them, what the root of the word chaos was, because we were going out into adventure and it sometimes got a little chaotic because you can't have adventure if you have, everything known. It's not an adventure. And each letter of the word chaos, had a particular quality that we were reminding ourselves before we went out. So there was a little mini ritual before we even left the residential treatment center to go out to Point Reyes National Seashore. So I'm imagining that, in our way of keeping people safe and also trying to make this place a safe place for the more than human world, that we would have those kind of, processes, for lack of a better word. But then as people do their own self-initiatory processes, they're going to define, what does it mean to have a better relationship with the earth? And we want to bring that in an explicit way. We sometimes talk about mirroring. So, I mean, we're getting into our philosophy a little bit now, but I think that one of the things that's going to happen is that people are going to be very self-selecting, and they're going to say, yeah, I want to be more involved. And then in order to be more involved, it's like, well, what do you mean? What does that feel like for you? What does that look like for you? How do you perceive yourself being more of a contributor? And then they would be explaining that to us. And then we're actually making a verbal, agreement that we're going to support them. It's kind of like going to a wedding and saying, we support this marriage. If you guys are having trouble, come and talk to us. We want to help you remain married. And it's something that's lacking in our society. And so that, I think, is part of this cultural piece. And so to be a member, it's almost like you're agreeing, you're going to be at a certain level of engagement, of support.
Sure.
I'm gonna get a drink of
mutual
water.
support.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you going to require that be monthly, or could it be a yearly contribution for someone to be a member?
Oh, I don't think we have figured that out yet. What I know from my research in nonprofit funding is that monthly donations actually raise a huge portion of money for nonprofits. And we're not a nonprofit at this time and may never be a nonprofit. But when I think about financial contributions versus, or donations, I should say, financial donations versus, donations of time or energy, I would like to see people move to more frequency.
Okay.
So if someone comes every 5 years, someone comes every 5 years, it's very different than if somebody comes quarterly. And part of that is that it's about relationship. You know, there are movies about people who get together once a year, you know, but it's very different than an ongoing connected relationship. And so I think we're moving toward accepting that, you know, people have more distance and less frequency, and there may be incredible amplitude and intensity in that distance relationship. But as the globe changes, you know, in this ecological crisis, localization and local communities become really, really important. And so learning how to sustain a local community with intimacy requires frequency.
Right.
And so I think it's more about frequency in some ways than just about intensity or amplitude. You think about Burning Man. There are people who are like in Burning Man camps and they're working all year long to produce that camp. And then there are those who pony up $50,000 and stay in an RV at Burning Man for 5 days. And that's their level of engagement. But their process is, I don't think, is as deep as those that are actually, you know, engaged in creating art or creating a camp. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I know you don't have this figured out yet. We're getting there, and I'm not going to let you get away from this without like putting some things on paper. So we're going to get some specificity. You can always change it later, but I'm not going to end the conversation without figuring it out. Yeah.
There's two axes here. One is, you know, how frequently you're engaged, and the other is how much you're engaged.
Right.
And so someone could be donating $5 a month, and that might actually be a deeper level engagement than the person who ponies up $500 or $5,000 or $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
When tax time comes around. So it's more about the relationship, and it's not just about the magnitude of the exchange.
Right. Okay. Well then I like the member definition being a monthly donation. And yeah, it could be a $5 donation or even that $1, you know, sponsor a tree donation. But if somebody has committed to giving you some donation on a monthly basis, that means they're staying connected with you and they're getting your newsletter. And, you know, like you have an ongoing connection with them versus a participant who just shows up for one weekend and might not ever come back.
Yeah, and participants, in my mind, are people who are garnering something and then sharing it with their community.
Sure.
Where a member or especially a contributor is someone who's contributing to this community specifically.
Right.
And I think the delineation that Lauren and I are trying to come up with is what would be the difference between someone who, you know, donated a lot of money but never came to Hotlum versus someone who came every weekend and moved rocks around and never donated any money, but every Saturday was here. For us, that frequency and that kind of activity, in some ways, I think has an import, and then they become a contributor.
Yeah, I think that one of the questions that I'm holding as you bring this up is, you know, people that do a one-time donation, like where do they fit on this? And I, because we have now two different donors, one who donated a vehicle, little ATV, and then the other one donated, you know, if we include, I wasn't including him since he has lived here as well. I was actually talking about the person who, the foundation that's donating, you know, for our kitchen. And so, yeah, so
what she's saying, there's a foundation. So we've obtained fiscal sponsorship.
Yeah.
And as a project of ecosystem restoration camps, we've received a donation from a foundation, a seed donation from a foundation. And we're going to be applying that to having a little bit warmer tent so that we can get warm when we're out here doing, you know, burn projects in the wintertime. And then we've also had another fiscal sponsorship, which allowed us to get a little ATV.
Yeah.
So those, I guess we need a category kind of like donors, right?
Yeah.
Like just from a perspective of managing our customer relations,
But
we want to
yeah.
nurture those donors, and they're not necessarily participants, and they're not necessarily contributors, but I think there is this other category of donation, and
Right.
these people have never even been here, but they're excited about what we're doing.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just holding that question of like, would they be like, where do they fit on this circle?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if you're giving them anything. Are you giving them decision-making power?
No.
Yeah, if you're not giving them decision-making power or ownership, I don't see them as being any different from a participant or a member.
Okay.
Okay. I think the only difference between participant and member is just the duration of the connection, and that you had said that members might actually be invited to be a part of something, to maybe even make some decisions.
It's not necessarily duration. That may not be the word that we're looking for. It's more about the level
Frequency.
of engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren may have missed that part of what I was saying, that there's amplitude or the amount of something
Right.
that somebody does,
I was sitting.
but then there's the frequency at which they participate.
Yeah.
And so somebody is going to develop a deeper relationship with people. You know, I've seen this in other nonprofits I've been involved with, where like you just know that that volunteer is going to be standing there in the parking lot helping people park their cars. And every single Sunday morning, they're there helping people park their cars. But you never know, except you read on the plaque on the wall that the so-and-so family fund donated $1 million to build the next building. But you have a relationship with that person who's helping you park the car. And so that to me is something, you know, in a sacred economics perspective, how do we honor those who are deeply engaged in the practice of relationship? And it's not just a monetary exchange or a big hurrah.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find a way to play with that in this distinction between a donor, a member, a participant.
The distinction I am making is in engagement specifically around decision making. So who has power in this organization? So it doesn't matter if somebody donates once or comes to a program or goes to your website. If they don't get any decision making power, they're not even in a circle. Like, I'm trying to figure out who has power in this structure.
Right. And this is where we had a conversation earlier in one of our previous calls where I spoke about a friend of mine talking to me about indigenous cultures and how those that are tending, you know, a specific tree that provides food or a particular place that provides nourishment, that stewardship gives them a certain amount of prioritization in the decision about how that place is cared for and tended, and what happens with the benefits of tending that location. And so I think that there's something that just naturally occurs at some level. And I'd like to make it explicit.
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of going over the same thing.
It's important because we're trying to get on paper.
Yeah. Okay. I just.
Well, because we still haven't gotten specific. We keep talking about like these kind of vague philosophical ideas. I'm trying to get specific.
Hold on.
It's actually really specific. It's very specific.
Okay. And go ahead. Okay.
So what I'm saying is, we count the number of days that someone actually comes in a period of a year, and that would give them more entitlements than just someone who's never been here, even if they donated a large amount of money.
Okay, but what kind of entitlements?
Well, in influence and decisions about what needs to happen in a location. Like one of the things that we're having to do is to reduce the fuel load on the property. And this is a really difficult decision to make, given our cultural view of what a garden is supposed to look like, what landscapes are supposed to look like. But historically, this land burned every 3 to 5 years, sometimes even more frequently. But we don't have a historical record of a fire hitting this ground for 100+ years. And so it's really, really overgrown. So we actually have to work with our forester to make a plan about removing brush. And that means, taking these life forms and removing them in service of balancing the ecosystem to be fire resilient. So somebody who's never been on the property can't make that decision. So the funders, which is CAL FIRE, our firefighting and fire legal fire organization in California, are going to fund the project. And they're going to come and walk the land with us before we receive the funding. Like they have to come and see it. And so I guess what I'm saying is that you have to be here to have a real influence. We don't want influence from afar. And we've really discovered a lot about this. And I've been contemplating world systems theory. And so there's kind of a marker. Have you been here and how much time have you spent here before you start telling us what to do?
Sure.
Yeah. We get lots of people that come once and then say, and you need to do this and you need to do this.
Oh yeah.
And they've been here for a day or two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe longer, but they're not actually like, offering to say, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah.
And so that was to me, like, as you're moving from the member to a contributor, this like commitment to let's do this together feels like a big distinction.
Yeah.
On that.
Okay. So I mean, I'm seeing it. Just we haven't said the words that actually define these things yet. So what I think.
Can you help us?
Yes.
You think?
Yes, absolutely. I was just about to. So I mean, I think that at a participant level, they do have some power because they get to contribute to whatever's going on within whatever program they're involved in. So if they're involved in a volunteer program to do one certain thing, they might be able to make suggestions at least about how you're doing that one specific thing as you're doing it, right? Like they're involved, they're participating, right? So there's some amount of give and take there, but it's just within whatever program they're involved in, right? Whereas with a member, maybe there's just certain specific things that you would let them help you plan, like a yearly event, right? Or your solstice events or something. So the members might be involved in some way in like planning that event or just making suggestions for that event. They might, just be able to make suggestions to you or have conversations with you in general. And because they're a member, you would be more likely to listen to them than somebody who just showed up once, right? So there's some level of decision making there that they would be involved in, whether it's really explicit or just them being able to have access to you to talk to you. Then there's contributor. At that point, someone is actually making a commitment and they're saying, I am going to do this for a year or, however long it's going to take to do that thing, or I'm going to fill this role indefinitely. So there's some sort of a role that person is taking on that's defined. And within that role, they would have some decision-making power. And then they might also then be on a team in a group that would make decisions about some aspect of what's going on out there.
That feels good to
Well,
me.
what I think you're suggesting is that at the contributor level, it might be like a facilitator and they're contributing. And they have control over the program that they're facilitating. And yet I think there is a role for somebody who's not necessarily, contributing something that is real tangible, but they're a member because they're here frequently. And so they're like high frequency participants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your volume's gotten a little lower.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, like high frequency participants. Yeah, whether that's that they're coming out there often or that they are making donations often. Like, you can decide. It's up to you how much involvement you want to give
Right.
them.
So
But
if someone comes
something.
if someone comes more than 4 times a year, they start to become a member rather than a participant.
Right.
Like we could have hard numbers with that.
Yeah, you need to have
Sure.
hard numbers. Exactly. And
Right. So that's what I'm suggesting is that like you move from being a participant who might come once a year to being a member if you're, participating, on a quarterly basis with an activity here.
sure.
Or, if you're participating in, maybe we end up having, a Zoom call monthly or something like that.
Mhm.
Like there's kind of a way that you, for lack of a better word, earn, the trust, and it's relational. It's like we're developing relationships through frequency
Mhm.
as well as through commitment.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and you could just keep track of that maybe by having kind of a members only list, email list or something, so that you have it all in a list somewhere. These are our members. Whether it's because they're on your donation site or because they're, committed to coming out to a program every quarter, they get put on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we're moving toward having a customer relations management system sooner rather than later.
Sure.
It would help us with, these specific definings. Like Lauren talked about, like the
Mhm.
customer funnel,
Mhm.
and someone, makes some ovation that they're interested in your product,
Mhm.
and how do you get them to actually
Sure.
buy something?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
so
just.
I guess we're doing the same thing, but ultimately we're buying into a model of change to
Mhm.
help heal our relationship with a dying ecosystem.
Yeah, this does have a lot of parallels with the sales funnel, but I got this circle diagram from Arthur Brock, and he called it circles of engagement in an open community. So
Like it.
Which I
this,
think is the way we want to think of it.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. So it's like a sales funnel, but for a community organization where it's not just them buying
Yeah.
products, it's them getting more and more involved in your organization.
For sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay,
So
so we're at the contributors make a commitment. Does that mean that they need to take on a role? Does that mean that they are part of your governance system where they would actually be assigned a role?
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
For example, somebody may be, and there's been many people who've talked about this, they may want to contribute to making a movie about Hotlum.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're making a commitment to taking that on, and they're going to have a lot of say over how that movie is produced.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Well.
And so that would be an example of a contributor, or a facilitator is going to do a workshop or develop a convergence. Um, and so they're going to have a lot of say over that particular, you know, threshold of responsibility is sometimes called.
Sure.
So in some ways, we're kind of looking at things from a sociocracy, whereas I think
Mm-hmm.
at the partner level, they're involved in much more general and high level decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe if we become a nonprofit, it'd be like a board of directors. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of influence there. And so we haven't figured out our entity process, but I think the distinction between a contributor and a member is that a contributor is producing something or contributing something specific
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and have a lot of say over that. Whereas, at the partner level, they have say over kind of the whole
Yeah.
process of what is our our way of fulfilling our purpose.
Yeah. Um I think that it's exactly that. A contributor has a role and um a specific a say, a big
Mm-hmm.
say in a
Mm-hmm.
particular project
Mm-hmm.
or something that we're doing
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of has its own container.
Yeah.
And then a partner would be um, really contributing to the creation and implementation of the entire vision of
Right.
what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
but
mean.
with a deep level of trust, and there would be an invitation
Mm-hmm.
from us to invite them to be in that level.
Yeah. So would that include people who share ownership and people who are like on the board, or would you have a different name for that group other than the board?
I don't know if I like the board title unless we do go with the nonprofit thing. I mean, I would say there might be some ownership, like financial ownership, but I think a lot of it is really about that aligning with our vision and really having that commitment um, to the realization, to the co-creation and realization of that vision.
To say it another way, contributors at some level have said that they are in alignment with our purpose. And I think purpose and vision are two different things, and it's a little hard for us to talk about our vision yet, but our purpose is pretty clear. And I have some examples that I could maybe make.
I don't think we have time. No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're getting almost out of time. And saying that they share your vision is not the level of specificity that I want. Saying they are elected to your board is the kind of specificity that I want. Saying that you are sharing financial ownership with them is the level of specificity that I want. Like, what's the actual, like, they could sue you for some reason kind of level of they are now decision makers in this organization? What is that threshold?
I think it's an invitation to be a partner. I mean, if we wanted to have
but what is a partner? What is it? What is it?
Well, we've imagined a profit sharing and a decision-making partnership. And so how we develop the profit sharing model and how we develop the decision-making levels of influence, we're still unsure of, because there's nobody who's stepped up to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've inquired with maybe one person at this point. And I think that it's really premature for us to even figure that out until we have an entity and decide what we are. So we're kind of at the basic level of maybe having an advisory board, which is an invitation to just share knowledge, but there's no decision making nor profit sharing in that level with an advisory board. A board of directors is very different. And there's a liability with being being on a board of directors too.
Yeah.
So I think we're still so emergent, it's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, you can also think of it as, we're designing the organization as it is now as well, which means that the partner is you two, and you're more than one person.
Try it again.
Sorry. Right now that level of partner is the two of you, and you're more than one person. So you need to have some agreements, you probably already do, around how you're sharing power and how you're sharing ownership. So what does that look like now? What can I write in this bubble that describes what you're doing right now?
I think we can, and there's a distinction.
I mean, this is a really, really good point. Like we've been talking a lot about how our relationship is the micro of the macro that we're manifesting. So we don't have an explicit agreement about, any kind of profit sharing or any kind of decision making, but I would say we're acting with a large amount of joint discussion, with ultimate decision making being held, depending on what we're talking about, with Lauren or with me, and we work toward having consensus. But I think it'd be really good for us to write that out.
Yeah.
And say, this is your circle of influence. This is your circle of influence. This is where they maybe overlap.
Right.
And what decisions do you have complete veto over?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say that for me, as like Jonathan is the title of the land is in Jonathan's name. The vision of this, the overarching vision of this, originated with the vision that Jonathan had on the river. It fits really well with what I care about and what I love. but there's even with that, there's a like I haven't contributed financially to the same extent that Jonathan has, and my like I'm seeing where I fit within the vision that Jonathan has, to contribute and let it grow, but it's not originating with something that was like, this was my idea. It was actually Jonathan's idea. And so I'm holding, I don't know if this is helping where
that's more really, getting there. Okay, we're out of time. Yeah. So I'm going to give it to you as homework to think about how you two would like it to work. If you got explicit about how you two are working together, and then just keep in mind, what if there was just a third person? What if just one more person came in? If the rules that you're making between the two of you would still work with that third person. So first think about you two, and then how could we fold a third person into this? If it can work for 3 people, it can probably work for 5 people.
Sure. Okay. It sounds like a good goal.
And then we'll be able to clearly define a little better. So yeah, we've got participant, member, contributor, and partner. We got that far, and next time we'll figure out. And I know, like you guys don't know what legal structure you want yet, but like I would like to be able to make a recommendation. I am a business consultant, and this is the part that I consult on, like the actual organizational structure part of it. What I've been doing so far has mostly been coaching, because I'm not a marketing guru. I'm not, I'm a structure person. So we've just gotten to that point in the process where I can start going, hey, I think that this might work. And what about this? Like, I want to start making more suggestions, and see if I can help you come up with a structure that you could take to a lawyer. And of course, you don't have to stick with it, but if we can just, pick a direction and just go down the rabbit hole, we might be able to come up with something.
I would really like that. I feel like we're really at that decision-making point. And with like the questions that you're asking as far as like these different roles would really, the structure that we choose to have for our for Hotlum is really like there's a big relationship between our circles of engagement and that legal structure. So I would love to hear your thoughts and go through that. Don't you think, Jonathan? Yeah.
That was one of, I think, the things that I said in my original, inquiry was like, what is one of the goals? Entity formation, like what kind of legal structure?
Sure. Yeah, I want to help you mainly with the legal and governance structures. Like that's where my zone of genius is. And, I learned from, when I first started trying to consult with people that, if I just jump in there and go, well, if I was you, I would do this and this and this and this, and just like lay a complete organizational structure on somebody from the get-go, they'll look at it and go, that's interesting. Like they don't know what to do with it. They don't have any idea what I'm talking about. It isn't what I want. They want, so I had to go to Boulder for 4 years and spend over 1,000 hours in trainings and probably about $30,000 worth of trainings to learn how to coach, so that I could shut my mouth and listen long enough to find out what the other person actually wants and, take my time stepping through it. So that's what I've been doing up to this point. But now I want to become the bossy consultant who's like, do this. Right. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'll keep thinking about it because, I have ideas, but there's multiple ways that you can do it. So,
yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit, the leaning toward a social purpose corporation versus just an LLC with, really clear bylaws so that we're structured in a way that can limit some liability and also let the, general public know, like, what are we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with that, I think we can close now.
Okay, cool. Well,
I have more to say, but I don't think it needs to be in this conversation.
Can you sum it in a sentence?
I'd rather not do it. We should close.
Okay.
We can talk about it. It's a bigger conversation. what I say is going to elicit a bigger conversation than we have time for right now.
Maybe
so
next
this
time.
is not the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. It looks like on Facebook, a few people liked us while we were talking. So people actually saw it.
Yay.
Benjamin said hi. So yay. Hi, everybody. And bye, everybody. It was great talking with you. And oh, by the way, if you want to join my Patreon, I have a Patreon.
Regenerative Revolution, is that what it's
Regenerative Revolution. Yeah. Patreon.
Yeah.
So, all
I
right.
thought that was your Patreon. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Cool.